See, stress testing has come out as one of the outcomes of the major economic crisis that came out. The reason being most of the scenarios which the companies test is generally based on VAR. VAR has become one of the powerful tools for risk management, probably for the last 2 decades or whatever. But the major problem has come out that if we see the way the VAR is calculated, we compute the mean as well as standard deviation, and we say mean minus probably 1.96 times standard deviation or 2.33 times standard deviation, something like that. Now, depending on 1% or 5% kind of a var, whatever we have to compute, we are computing it through this kind of a process. Now, the mean and standard deviation are purely calculated from the data itself, from the historical data. You are calculating the mean and the standard deviation. So, what was happening was, if there was a very extreme scenario, let's say something has not happened in the last 1 year, last 2 years, some major economic loss or economic situation has not occurred in the last 1 2 years, but you have taken the mean and the standard deviation of your last 2 years and you have computed the var. What will typically happen is, beyond a certain point, your var is not able to predict that extreme losses, right? Because generally, okay, we are typically seeing this, the mean, standard deviation, so 99% var also may be somewhere here, right? So what is this extent of 1%? It's not able to predict. And at the same time, this this particular amount is computed based on the last 1 year or last 2 years historical data. Let's say one classic example which I have observed pretty recently, Infosys share price. Probably if I have looked at in the last, leaving out the last year, 2 years before that, the maximum loss on one single day for an Infosys share was not even 10%. Probably in the years 2009, 10, 11, even when the economy was down, their share price was never down more than that 10% on a single day. But so when some investor might have computed the VAR for the investments in Infosys, the mean and standard deviation, whatever would have come out, would have been purely based on those calculations. And they would have computed your VAR requirement to be much lesser also. There is a 1% chance that your loss would be more than 5% or 7% in a one single day. But in the last year, if I had seen, there was a 22% fall on one single day, right? So if that had been the case, probably the investor who had bought the shares of Infosys, he might have gone very heavily bankrupt also, right? It could have taken him to such an extreme situation, which means the VAR models which are being used, they can generally predict the most common behavior, but they are not able to test out those extreme behaviors. Probably if the share price falls by 22% or 25%, do I have a mechanism, right? Do I have a backup for that? Otherwise, that particular company would have got, any investor in Infosys, he would have got into a cash flow crisis, and which could have led to a series of problems after that. So for these kind of tests, we are talking of a stress testing kind of a mechanism. Mostly after the financial crisis, the need for stress testing has become very high, and that's where it is said that you use this stress testing more as a complement to VAR and not as a substitute. So VAR will model your more regular kind of scenario, but apart from the more regular kind of scenario, you focus even on the very extreme conditions also. And how do you decide those extreme conditions? We are talking of from two different standpoints. One are the event driven scenarios, the other is a portfolio driven scenario. When we talk about a event driven, you visualize what all events could result in extreme losses, whether it is on a credit front or a market front or on operations front. Probably what could be the various scenarios, various events, probably mergers. Are we thinking of any kind of a merger? If there is a possibility of a merger, what could be the extreme fall in the share price that could occur, right? Or probably some other natural calamity. If there is a natural calamity, what could be the kind of maximum loss that can occur because of operations or because of market or whatever, or the exchange rate fluctuation, the current scenario, right? Probably there could be a lot of companies which are losing very badly because of the current exchange rate fluctuation, right? So, and they are not normal movements. In one single year, the exchange rate fluctuation of this much percentage happened very rarely, right? Probably almost, I think 30% at least, 30% could be the increase in the exchange rate within the last 1 year period, which were very rare occurrences in the historical past. Now, what could be the impact because of these kind of events on my portfolio?